So let's explore the book of Ecclesiastes. The scripture that I want to talk about was read by Dr. Susan Alford, and her wonderful father, Dr. Alford, prayed over our service today. You need to know, as you go to Ecclesiastes 3, that the title Ecclesiastes means teacher or preacher. Solomon called the wisest man who ever lived. If you want to engage the wisest man that ever lived, you might want to read it. The wisest man that ever lived, who happens to be the son of David, is believed to have written the book in his later years. Didn't write it as a young man. He wrote while reflecting on all of his life experiences and the pursuit of the meaning of life. He felt like as he come down toward the end of his life that he had discovered some things about the real meaning of life. He strongly advocates that to find happiness, one should perhaps rearrange priorities. Boy, do we all need a lesson on that. What we think is happiness, our pursuit of happiness, is often futile or empty, or when you achieve it or get there, it's not quite what you thought it was going to be. So this pursuit of happiness is clearly defined as something that it involves God, and he unpacks things that will be evident when we find that place in the Lord. So let's explore the book of Ecclesiastes. In a nutshell, Ecclesiastes is a compilation of wisdom literature characterized by its philosophical reflections and poetic language and the use of proverbs. I want to pick up. I'm not going to read what they read. I'm going to pick up after that, and then I'm going to refer back to what was read at the beginning of the service. So go to Ecclesiastes 3. Ecclesiastes 3. I'm going to pick up with verse 11. He has made everything beautiful. Pastor, I don't feel beautiful. Hollywood wouldn't say I'm beautiful. The cameras don't say I'm beautiful. Culture doesn't say I'm beautiful. It doesn't matter what they say. He has made everything beautiful. Does anybody believe that today? Everything beautiful in its time. He's renewing, restoring, making all of his creation beautiful in his time. Also, he has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from the beginning to the end. No one's smart enough. I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice and to do good in their lives, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. In other words, it's okay to party, everybody. Get off it. It's okay to party. I knew there would be very few amens when I threw that out there. Hallelujah. I got a question right over here. We'll deal with that later. It is the gift of God, is what he says. It's the gift of God. I know that whatever God does, it shall be what? Forever. Nothing can be added to it, nothing taken away from it. God does it that men should fear before him that which has already been, and that which is and what is to be has already been. And there's nothing new under the sun, he says in another place. So if you think you're really getting original with your thinking and you got some creative idea that's never been thought about before, there really is nothing new under the sun. It's been thought of. It may not have been manifested, but it's been at least thought of. There's something there. It's already been, and God requires an account of what is past. May God add his blessings to his word. Amen. I want to pick up with the passage that was read at the beginning of the service, a time to be. Have you ever wondered what God's will is? Has anybody ever wondered what God's will is? That's probably the most common question I've got in my ministry. I don't know the will of God. Should I take this assignment? Should I accept this role? What should I do? Where should I go? What is God's will? Should that job be pursued, accepted, or rejected? Must I go to college? Must I get married? Is he the one? Is she the one? What is God's will? Should I remain single and invest my money? Make money? Big questions. The questions can be endless when it comes to attempting to answer the obvious one big question. And these big questions lead to big decisions and can greatly impact positively or negatively the trajectory of one's life. So, what is God's will with these big questions? How do you guys find God's will? I look at the young because a lot of the big questions hit them, but you know what? All of us get that question now and then. How does one go about finding God's will and the answers? Thank you, Jeremy. The individual referred to as the wisest man who ever lived seems to provide for us a rather simple yet profound way to discover God's will. If you really want to know God's will, you need to listen. And the secret seems to be wrapped up in what I'd call, in this passage, agricultural rhythm. Now, if you know nothing about farming, you're going to be disconnected, but let me help you a little bit. If you've ever put a seed in a pot of dirt and watched somebody, certainly you did that at school, and you observe something growing and you nurtured that, you're going to have some concept of what's being talked about here. According to Solomon, while observing and reflecting on one's lifetime, the repetitive patterns in the journey and how it relates to shifting seasons, dry seasons, rainy seasons, cold, cool, and warm seasons, too much rain, too much of a good thing, seasonal flooding, storms and wind. That same kind of stuff goes on in our lives. It manifests differently, but the same kind of rhythm in life happens to all of us in this room. And if you don't recognize the season, you may be trying to plant in dry seasons in your life, and it's no more God's will than anything, but you're not open-eyed enough to even understand what season you're going through. Understanding God's will may start with looking at what God's doing. Observing what he's doing, not just in here, by the way. For you that think God only works inside the confines of a church building on Sunday morning, look what God's doing in politics. Look what God's doing around the world. Look what God's doing in our city, in our community. I'm telling you, you may not think God's moving because you didn't get a chill bump on Sunday morning. I'm telling you, he is moving, and he's moving every day. He's moving all around us. The chill bump may be your problem. You may be having some kind of emotional anxiety. And I'm not making fun of that. That's real. But how you feel has nothing to do with whether or not God's moving. Whether or not the spiritual gifts are being exercised in your midst, that has nothing to do with whether God's moving. I promise you, when you walk to your car and go out to your car after this service and all the music stops, God's been moving all over this world. When you look up at the sun and you feel the warm temperature this afternoon, God's got all that. He had the rain yesterday, the cool, damp day. So the secret seems to be wrapped up into what this agricultural rhythm is all about. The weather and disasters that parallel with the four seasons must be considered as a model when pursuing God's will. The struggles in life are compared to dry seasons. A time for this, a time for that, a time for this, a time for that. Hard work. There's this intentional strategic sowing that God brought into the sowing season. You don't go plant seed out there in the hot, dry summer. You're smart enough to know that's not the season to do that. So you don't have to stand around praying, oh, what is God's will? Is it God's will I put the seed in the ground? No, dummy. I don't mean to be. I hear people do this all the time. All of the circumstances and everything around them, the season is all wrong, and they're talking about this big idea rather than understanding that the big idea, God may have given the big idea, but it's not time. They're not reading the season. The struggles in life are compared to these seasons. There's time to do each one of those things because one recognizes the time, the season. And all of this annual agricultural rhythm called seasons should unlock our understanding of how God works and how we can better understand His will in our lives. There's patterns and seasons, and we've got to read it. It's almost as if the author says, pay attention to the obvious. God's will can be better understood when looking through the lens of agriculture and seasons. The length of any given season, the length of any given season is determined by a sovereign God. The weathermen cannot determine how long or when spring's exactly. They know we're entering that season, we're getting close. In a few weeks we're going to have spring, but they can't tell you exactly what day spring will be. About the time they say it, it'll be 2 days later. God's sovereign will and purposes manages storms and fronts that come in and what the temperature will be. Some seasons are a little longer than other seasons, but we know generally what time those seasons hit. The length of any given season is determined by a sovereign God. So the same is true in our personal lives. Oftentimes, the greater the struggle, watch this, oftentimes the greater the struggle determines the greater reward and harvest. If you don't think it's a struggle putting seed in the ground and nurturing that seed and watering that seed out in the garden and having to pull weeds, I told you I've had bad memories of that stuff when we had a farmland available to us. And you got to go out there and work, and you got to bend your back over. And because it's so dry, they make you drag a hose out there and water, and we'll stand there and water plants, or you don't get to go to your game that night. It's work. But harvest time's coming. Harvest time's coming. Some of us act like God's not moving in our lives when we can't live in harvest every day. That's not real life, my friend. It doesn't matter how many scriptures you quote or how much name it and claim it you do or how much you stand. You got to move with God. God is the one who controls the seasons in your life and in my life and in this world. Let's give Him big praise for that. It's true. Now, you may have the promise right. You just got bad timing. So back to the question, how can I get some sort of idea what God's will is? Well, the first principle here is recognize the season. Listen to the first part of Ecclesiastes 3 again, verse 1. To everything, not just the agricultural rhythm, you have a season. You may not know it, and I hate to announce this, and it sounds very negative, but we might as well be honest. You and I are temporary if Jesus tarries. You've got one life to live. You've got one season. Now, if Jesus interrupts that with His return, hallelujah. We've all been wanting that for a long time, and it's going to happen. But I will tell you, I don't know the day or the hour, and neither do you. And I get real worried when I hear people start getting up into that. So, everything, to everything, not to some things, to everything, there is a season. A beginning and an end, a beginning and an end, a time for everything. The men of Issachar, the Bible tells us, who are one of the tribes of Judah, one of the 12 sons that was ultimately a tribe, had an understanding of their times. If you want to know God's will, and you can come and pray about it, I'll pray about it. I do pray about it on many things in my life. What is God's timing? A lot of times I feel like I've heard from the Lord, but I need to know I need to have timely talking. I know when to talk about this. I need to know when to push this. I need to know when to back off and when to push. Leadership better hear what I'm talking about. Some of you parents are trying to lead your kids, and you just do the most untimely talking, and you don't consider the season they're in, and you're doing untimely talking, and you're hurting the situation. We don't take this serious. We'd rather talk about a spiritual catharsis in the altar and try to hear God there, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm telling you, every day you can look, get your eyes open. God's moving all around us. Join what God's doing. Quit trying to get God to come and do what you want Him to do. Why don't you join what He's already doing? A time for everything. There's a season. Verses 1 through 8, I've got to read it again. To everything there's a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. Watch this. A time to be born, but there's a time to die. There's a time to plant, and there's a time to tear that old plant up out of the ground, a time to pluck it out. It's finished. A time to kill. Oh, I don't like that in the Bible. Well, it's there. Somebody shows up at your door and threatens your family's life. I believe God's called me to be a protector. Not to be aggressive or mean or operate out of revenge, but I'm going to protect my family if I can. Anybody else in the room? Come on. Come on. I'm going to protect my family. Because God put me there to do that. Anybody going to walk in my house and I'm going to exercise some kind of pacifist way to where they can do whatever they want to do if I've got the power to stop it? There's a time to kill. I'm not trying to justify that. There's also a time to heal. There's times to do away with some things. You've done everything you can do. But there's a time to keep working at it to make it heal. There's a time to break down, and there's a time to build up. There's a time to weep, and there's a time to laugh. We run into problems when somebody's laughing and we should be weeping. It's very inconsiderate. There's a time to weep. There's a time to laugh. And you don't need to force your weeping when God's just done something amazing in someone's life. Lay down your weeping and celebrate big with them. A time to mourn, a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. I watch people embrace and we're trying to fix something or correct something. You're getting in the way. You're not helping the situation. Well, I'm all about mercy. Well, unbridled mercy can do some bad things. We need mercy. And who's to say when we're trying to fix or help somebody that we're not showing mercy? It just may not look like mercy in your eyes. I'm sure Kyle would tell you when he was a young boy and he was getting disciplined, that didn't feel like mercy to him. But I observed it as mercy because I wanted him to grow and be built up as a young man to go in the right direction. Everybody say mercy. A time to keep, a time to throw away, a time to gain, a time to lose, a time to tear, a time to sow, a time to keep silence. There's a time to keep silence. But there's also a time to speak. Some people are out there speaking when they need to be still. Some people are still when they need to be speaking. A time to love, a time to hate, a time of war, and a time of peace. What are some things about seasons that we can learn from this passage? First of all, seasons are identifiable. Did you get that? You can identify seasons, can't you? Seasons are identifiable. I remember years ago, in fact, we were in Denver pastoring. We pastored there 10 years, and we took a group of elders to South Africa. We were there for 3 weeks to do work and some church planting efforts, and we were all over South Africa. And we did some pastors' conferences and coaching and teaching, and I went with a group of missionaries, and they were looking to join our tribe, and it was an organization, and we worked at that. But I remember leaving Denver in July and getting it at the Denver airport, getting on a plane with a group of men, and we fly to Johannesburg. Some of you missionaries have experienced this. Fly to Johannesburg, South Africa, and we're in the middle of the winter. Now, when I got off that plane, I didn't stand around wondering what season are we in. I didn't have to hear God to let me know what season we're in. It's very obvious. The foliage was off the trees. It was cold and damp. It was winter. And that's the way it works in the world. The world with its seasons are somewhat on different schedules. You understand all that, different schedules. So, seasons are identifiable. Listen to what Paul says about common sense when it comes to recognizing and identifying your seasons in 1 Thessalonians 5. But concerning the times and the seasons, my good brethren, he says, there's no need I write to you. You ought to have enough common sense, he says. No, he said that. I didn't. To to be able to figure out what seasons are and what the seasons are like around you, to identify those seasons. The 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, fall. The agricultural rhythm of all that. What can we learn about the seasons when it comes to reading God's will? Seasons are identifiable, but seasons are also temporary. There's a beginning and there's an end. Oh, Pastor, I'm in such a difficult season. Those are tough. I'm in a hard season. I don't know all that God is saying in this difficult season. From where I'm from, up in Upper Michigan, you're in the winter months, my friend. If you're going through a difficult season, you need to look at that season and understand that God is up to some things. I'm in a difficult season. So what can we learn about God's will? We learn that seasons are temporary. They're identifiable and they're temporary. What are you saying, Pastor? I'm saying there's going to be a better day. You didn't get that. There's going to be a better day. You say, well, I'm diagnosed with this for the rest of my life. I still proclaim to you that there is going to be a better day. If you have eternal life, you can bank on it. There's going to be a better day. All of your needs are going to be met. All of your health is going to be perfect. There is a better day. There's a better day coming. We all look forward to a better day no matter what season we're in. We can give the Lord big praise for that, can't we? That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Seasons are identifiable. Seasons are temporary. Seasons repeat. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to throw up my age here, but I've been through a lot of winters and springs. And some of you have been through more than I have. And they just come right back around. Seasons repeat. So when you get your deliverance, when you're walking in high cotton, when your bank is loaded up with cash, you've got the security of your investments for the future. I don't get too high and I don't get too low. I've learned that over the years. Something can come along and change everything. Congress can make a decision and all of a sudden you don't have as much money that you thought you had in your retirement fund. Some of you getting worried here. I'm staying out of politics. I'm just saying. Things can happen. The stock market can drop off. But you know what? People have discovered when they stay with it, it comes back. There's good times come. Good times repeat. Bad times repeat. In your family. I've had people die in my family. But I've also had people who are born in my family. Seasons repeat. Good times repeat. Blessings repeat. All kinds of good things repeat. So you don't get too low when you're going through the winter months and difficult times. You know spring is coming. You know summer's coming. You know there's going to be a season to plant again. If God's got breath in your body, you're here to produce life and reproduce in some manner. That's a good thing. Seasons are temporary. Seasons repeat. Seasons are identifiable. Not only should we recognize the season, secondly, we must get on board with what God is doing already, and we do that by reacting to the season. I like what he says in verse 15 about that repeating, by the way. That which is has already been. You're not going through anything you probably haven't gone through before. You just forgot about it. Or somebody around you is going through it. That which you're going through has already been, and what to be has already been. So you're not going through some new thing that somebody else had gone through. They repeat. But I think the second principle here is we have to react to the season. It's one thing to know the season, identify the season, but we have to react to the season. We react by making common sense decisions after we recognize the season. God is in control of the seasons in my life, is he not? Is he? So first it's reading them and then reacting to the season. I'm going to call these common sense decisions. It's hearing the voice of God. Dr. Howard Hendrickson in his book called Engaging God. Debbie worked when we pastored in Denver there those 10 years. Debbie, a good part of that time, she was part of the original office when the office was being put together and growing. The first year they hired Deb to be an administrator there, and she ended up working for one of the top VPs. She now you know why she's bossy to men. She managed 150 men. They all listened to her. It's a department. And Deb did that for years, and I'll brag on her. She was very skilled and good at it. In fact, we were questioning what God's will was with her holy assignment when we moved from there. She left quite a career. And I don't mean to name drop, but Bill McCartney was just 2 offices up from her office, and got to minister to Bill's daughter, who went through a similar story like Deb did, and God strategically had her in the right place at the right time. And so Dr. Howard Henderson was a common speaker with Promise Keepers in those days. And I remember getting the opportunity to pick him up at the airport. I've got his book, Engaging God. Just so happened I'm going back through that, sitting on my end table early in the mornings. And I pick up and read a little bit of that, Engaging God. And there's some real common sense in this whole ability to hear God that he talks about. He says, move with what God's doing. Learn to get on board with what he's doing. So many of us want him to get on board with what I want. God, come and bless this. I got this idea. Well, why not get on board with what he's doing? Join up with what he's doing. Don't cry and pray and insist on God getting involved with what you're doing. You get involved with what he's doing. And when you join up with God, and if you're really going to do what he wants, he'll get you there. And he'll empower you, and he'll make a way. There's things that God has got us involved with right now I never dreamed I would ever be involved with. But God keeps leading the path and opening doors. And when we walk through the door, another door opens and another door opens and his blessings come. And it just keeps happening. Isn't God good? Can we give him praise for that? That he is a good God. Join up with what God's doing. You don't kick the door in and rebuke the devil because you don't believe God did what you wanted him to do today. You do what God's doing. Well, I don't know what to do. Well, do what you know to do. You know you're supposed to go to church. Am I? Is church really important? Yes. Doesn't mean every church has been right or every church is perfect. My Bible says that the bride of Christ has got spots and wrinkles. If you're coming to church expecting the church to be perfect, you're in the wrong place. You don't have a perfect pastor. You're in the wrong place. But together we're trying to figure it out. Together we try to pick one another up and help one another. But listen to me, we're all a mess. It's only the grace of God. So we get into a body of believers or community of believers, it doesn't matter how big it is, but we get into it and we try to help one another along. We know we're supposed to read the Word or get into the Word. We know we're supposed to pursue God on some level. We know we're supposed to give to the work of the Lord. Our finances, that was mentioned earlier, there's certain things that we know. Well, I don't know if that's true. Well, you better get involved with what God's doing. He tells you. So when you do what you know to do and you make common sense decisions based on the seasons, you join up with what God is doing. I'll give you another example of this. In 2008, we bought this property early in 2007. We continued the lease. People thought we were nuts. It was 176 acres. I'd get into the restaurant. What are you guys doing? Buying a golf course. Tee-hee-hee-hee-hee. I laughed with it, but inside I thought, you just wait. What are you going to do with 176 acres, Pastor? I didn't know what we were going to do with it, but we were master planning. We were working on it. I didn't have all the answers. And if you didn't have the answers, you'd hear, okay. You know who the worst of it was? I'm just going to say it. Rather than celebrating with us, it's people from other churches. Now, I didn't have to fight that battle. It didn't matter what they think. What mattered is what does this family think and what does God think. Now, I'm not throwing off on other churches. Not every church did that. And I want to do the opposite. I want to celebrate with what God's doing in all the churches in town. God, may you fill up every church in this city with people who need to be born again and love you and be filled with your Spirit. So we buy this property. We didn't have all the answers. Somehow we went on faith, borrowed the money, and here we are. So we get working on a plan, working. Now we can divide this up, and maybe we can prove the bank that we can sell this piece. 2008, we decide we're going to put a shovel in the ground. And we're going to break ground for this building. Now, this building looks a lot different than that original one was supposed to look, which was good because it gave us time to think some things through. We're over there pinned up on the corner of Keith and 25th. The parking was, in fact, I used to say it all the time. If you're going to come to Westmore, you had to want to come to Westmore. I mean, you really had to want to come there because you had to walk down hills and up hills. Coming in, you walked up a hill if you came from downhill, and when you walked out but to the big parking lot, you had to walk up a hill. I mean, it was difficult to navigate. Is anybody thankful that the Lord has put us where He's put us? We don't have to navigate hills anymore. Thanks be unto God. That was a tough time. And so we bought this property. So we're ready to put a shovel in the ground, got plans, engaging architects. We're talking about it publicly. We're going to do this or that. And I remember I had a business meeting coming up, an important pastors' council meeting and leadership meeting in the spring, and we were hoping to be able to get a shovel in the ground, maybe March, April, May, somewhere in there. And we're rocking and rolling. We're doing all of our study, and the economy goes to hell in a handbasket. 2008. Man. Now, I prayed, but did I have to go, oh God, show us your will? When interest rates jump up to 9%, building costs was going through the roof, everything was moving and shaking, people were telling me they're losing their retirement funds, and I'm supposed to get up and ask you for help to build a church? And I remember I got sick because I was worried about how is it all this going to be interpreted? Way too much me and all that. I had to get rid of me. And one of the council members just happened to stop by my house just to check on some things. What are you going to talk about this? And I walked him out on the back deck away from people in the house, and I called him by name, and I said, I'm going to tell you, I don't think it's time to build. I think it's time to tap the brake. He said, you know what? I've been thinking the same thing. I said, okay, how do we go to the council when we've been talking about all of this, the finance teams and stewardship campaign director? How are we going to break this news? Because I can't do it. I remember the question, did you hear from the Lord? Uh-huh. It wasn't fear. It was common sense. There's a time to build. There's a time to stand still. You and I need to read the seasons. Now, the Lord, through my prayers and through words that began to come out, confirmed what I was already reading. Well, you're quiet this morning. Read the seasons. Common sense decisions. God is always moving. Go join what He's already doing. I'll never forget that time. And you know what? One of the best things, we saved millions of dollars by waiting on the Lord. We paid off the property. Interest rates dropped. We actually built at the perfect time and did not know it. Can we give the Lord praise that He's had His hand on us and continued to guide us and lead us? It's a big deal. Secondly, common sense decisions should lead to clear directives and actions. Let me tell you how smart I was 2 weeks ago when I was trying to figure out what the Lord's will was. It was freezing cold, about 7 degrees out that morning, and I'm standing in my closet and I'm wondering what to wear. Do you think I had to stop and struggle about what God was saying to me about what to put on when it's 7 degrees outside? I don't mean to make fun, but that's about the silliness of some people when it comes to hearing God's will and timing in their lives. You say, God never breaks. Yeah, God breaks through that. Those are rare times. Rare times. I'm not saying God can't move you against that. There's certainly a few prophet stories where, okay, but you better know you hear God. Yeah. That's good. That's good. If I hear the Lord, then here we come. And Debbie and I probably had 1 or 2 of those situations in our lifetime where the Lord said, here's the circumstances, but I need you to do it. But if it's Him, it's all on Him. He's coming through. But don't act like that's every day. Expect you to read the seasons. You don't have to get in the car. You don't have to get an appointment with a counselor or pastor Well, what's God's will? And all God's working all around you, and it's right there in front of you. So clear directives and actions. Due to the season I'm in, I don't wear a T-shirt. I didn't have to ask what God's will was when it came to the apparel that day. My biggest responsibility was choosing the color and the style. I might have a part in that and a partnership with that, but I had enough sense to know that there's seasonal clothing that needs to be involved here because of the season. One's actions should support the season. Your directives, your decisions. Timing is everything, is it not? Timing. Not only should we recognize and react to the season, thirdly, we must realize God's sovereign purpose. Verses 11 and 12. He's made everything beautiful in his time. Not your time, his time. Everything beautiful in its time. Your trials, your struggles, the storms, the cold weather, the warm weather. Everything's being made beautiful. The flowers are about to come out. You're going to see it in a few weeks. God help us we don't get another freeze after all the buds come out. But Lord, will you help us with that? But anyway, you understand. And so it's going to get beautiful again. It's been gray and dreary and cloudy and all of that. And it's even more pronounced in certain parts of the country. But everything's beautiful in its time. A new season's coming. Is anybody looking forward to spring and summer? Well, I knew I'd get an amen on that, right? Yeah. So every season is preparatory for the next. In fact, you wouldn't appreciate the spring and summer if you didn't have a cold winter. My brother-in-law is watching on media because he's home with my mother-in-law today, and he's from Hawaii. He can disregard what I just said. He has no appreciation for one season, is all he knows. So realize God's sovereign purpose. There's a plan. Spring planting and showers prepare roots to go deep so that when the summer sun comes with its heat, its vitamins, and its energy, the fall harvest can come right on time. Then comes the winter, a season of dormants, when soil rests and pestilence go into hiding. There's agricultural rhythm. We get it just like life. Seasons of prosperity, seasons of dormants, seasons of planting, and seasons of reaping, seasons of dryness, seasons of rain. Let me tell you something. If you're going through a tough time, God has not divested himself from you and left you, and it's not that he doesn't care about you anymore. He is at work. He is moving. He's moving in a different way in your season than he might be somebody else's. One more time, let's give him praise that he's always at work, he's always moving, he's always delivering. So no matter what your season is, know that God has a plan for your life. So recognize the season. React with the appropriate action. And recognize it's all part of God's plan. It's called seasonal rhythm. The whole plan is to bring about a harvest. Did you know that you are to be bringing about a harvest? You're to produce. Well, what am I to produce? If nothing else, you're to reproduce yourself. Just like a plant. Some of us eat our seed when it comes to giving. We don't like the season we're in, so I'll just go eat my seed. Well, you go eat your seed, you're not going to have anything to plant when it's planting time. Many people eat their seed. Then I can't afford to pay tithe. I'm not cutting on anybody, but I will tell you, Debbie and I learned when we didn't have any. I mean, when I say we didn't have money, we didn't have money. I'm not going to poor mouth you. But our tithe was the first thing came out of our budget. Because for us, I'm not going to impose all this on you, but for us, you said before your electric bill, yes. But I want to tell you, I never missed an electric bill. I never missed a car payment. As long as I was doing my best to manage well, God always took care of us. Debbie Page, am I right or am I wrong? When we got married, we said, it's coming out first. It's not negotiable. Because my dad taught me when I was 6 years old, 10 pennies, one comes out, it goes in a little pouch. It's God's. He's given you 90% to manage. Now, I didn't mean for this to be a tithe money, but it's just amazing how people will eat their seed. Well, I need a new car. My friend's got a new car, and you're competing with him, so you want to go get it. You deserve it. Well, what are we thinking? It might not be the season. If you're patient, it'll come. It's good preaching, Pastor Kelvin. Lord, help me, Jesus. Ooh, how did I get into all of this? Production. He's called all of us to produce. So if you're in a dry season, he's not done with you. Finally, there's results of a harvest season. I like the verses 12 and 13 here. I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice and to do good in their lives. There's going to be a season when you're going to get to rejoice. You're going to be doing a lot of good in their lives. And also that every man should eat and drink, back to partying. And you're going to enjoy all the good of your labor. Enjoy the good of your labor. You know, our biggest problem in America and in our church world is that we constantly compare what we have to somebody else. Pastors are comparing properties and church buildings. That's the dumbest thing we could ever do. And I felt that way long before we got this property. He's given me an assignment to pastor this church family in this community. So whatever God does for us, I want others to be just as blessed. And I mean this, and more. It's kingdom. It's kingdom. But I like it when they want us to be blessed too and celebrate with us. Well, we've had some good celebrations around here. Every Wednesday night for me, we sit around that common space and people are eating and you hear the roar in the church, all the talking and everybody enjoying being together. That's some rejoicing. That's enjoying what God has given us. Today we sit in a comfortable place and walked in a comfortable building. We're enjoying what God has given. Can we give the Lord thanks again for what He's given us? He's blessed us. He's blessed us and blessed us. So we rejoice heavily. Rejoice big. You pray big when you're in a dry season and going through problems. You pray big. Oh, God, help me. Desperation. But why not rejoice big? Rejoice heavily. Rejoice over the harvest you're enjoying today. Quit comparing what another guy's got in his bank account. I'm going to go to the table today and rejoice that we've got good food and that we've got clothes on our back and we've got, how blessed are we, church? I promise you, the one that possesses the least here is quite blessed to others around the world. We are blessed. So we should be rejoicing heavily, thanking Him for what He's done for us, for me, for our people, for our tribe, for our church. Rejoice heavily. Then he says, respond generously. That's what the wise man is saying. Rejoice and do good. Do good. Do good. Respond generously. If He's blessed us generously and done good for us, why can't we do good for others? Rejoice heavily. That's the result of a harvest season. Rejoice heavily, respond generously, and receive bountifully. Don't feel guilty because you're so blessed. We got people, it's all over in academic institutions, like there's something wrong with you if you prosper. I'm done with that. I'm done with that nonsense. We're to share, we're to give, we're to help others out. In fact, I don't think that's so much government's job as it should be the church's job. The government's not called on to go help everybody with everything, but the body of Christ can do a lot more. That's why we're working on food and we're hoping that we've got contracts down there in Florida right now so we can get more food up here to where we can help somebody that needs food. Just because we're blessed doesn't mean we stop helping people. In fact, all the more responsibility to help people, to help them with needs and to help them recover and to help them move forward in our community and our church. So we need to be lavishly blessed so we can bless others. What is that old E.V. Hill used to say? If He can get it to you, He wants to get it through you. So receive bountifully. Every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good for your labor. If you labor for it, you deserve to be blessed. Some jobs pay more than others. Some careers pay more than others. Some people feel it's God's will. They go into a certain career and the pay scale isn't the same as somebody else. You get your eyes off everybody else and rejoice in your blessings and how the Lord has blessed you. Recognize your season. See what God is up to. The seasons may tell it's not time to move. Some of you wanting to move, the seasons may say it's not time to move. The seasons may tell you that you're trying to plant and invest in the wrong season. Or maybe there's a lack of patience and you're attempting to harvest when it's planting time. In other words, pay attention to the season. Recognize the season. Join up with what God's doing all around you. Look at opportunities when they come your way. Has God created those opportunities? Most opportunities that come your way are opportunities that God's opened up for you. As people will get paralyzed and fearful and walk away from them when God's opened up an opportunity that could be splendid and wonderful. Verses 1 through 8, one last time. To everything. There's a season. A time for every purpose under heaven. Time to be born, you just celebrated. A time to be born in the family, a time to die, time to plant, a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, and a time to gather those stones up, a time to embrace, there's a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain, there's a time to lose. I don't know that I like that one, but it's there. There's a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to throw away, a time to tear, a time to sow, a time to keep silence, a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What is God saying? I'm going to personalize this. In your time. What's God saying in your time, Chris? What's God saying in your time? The season you're in. To all of these wonderful, powerful missionaries in a culture that needs them. What's God saying to Rob about his family and his youth ministry? What is God saying to you now? How's he moving? What's moving around you? He's been moving and every day in your life. Your health, one more day of health, one more day of prosperity. What are you supposed to do with that? What do you wear? What do you not wear? What is he saying to you through his movement? My dad, when he was correcting, it was really rare, he did it. My mom corrected every day, but my dad was really rare. But I could look at him when he was headed my way, and he didn't even have to speak. I was about to enter into a new season. Read the room. When you lay your head down on your pillow at night, what was God doing today? How do I steward what he was doing? What is his will for my life? Did I accomplish his will in this beautiful day he gave me? And tomorrow, I want to continue to see the time, what you're doing, and what you're not doing, the shifting, the transition of seasons. Be aware. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure all that out. Farmers live in that all the time. They don't have to be told by you or have somebody come up and give them a word from the Lord that it's time for you to put your seed in the dirt. They don't need a prophet to come by and tell them it's time to pick the harvest. The harvest is right there in front of their face, ripe on the vine. A lot of that's the same way with us. Now, I'm not saying God doesn't speak. I'm not saying God doesn't whisper in your ear. I'm just telling you, don't miss God because that's the only way you're looking for him to speak to you. Let's stand together.